My name is Noah Briggs, and I was 11 years old the first time my family left me somewhere on purpose. Not by accident, not out of distraction, on purpose, as a joke. We were at Millfield train station on a Saturday afternoon, my mom, my stepdad, and my two stepbrothers, and one minute I was right there with them, and the next minute I turned around and the platform was empty and the train doors were closing and I could see them through the glass. My mother was laughing. My stepdad had his phone out. He was filming me. I pressed my hand against the glass as the train pulled away, and I watched my mother cover her mouth and turn to my stepdad and say something I couldn't hear, and I watched him lower the phone, and I watched them laugh. And I stood on that platform, 11 years old, completely alone, and I understood something with a clarity that children shouldn't have to develop that young. This was not a mistake. And what happened over the next 4 hours, how I got home, who helped me, what I found when I walked through that door, changed the entire direction of my life. Before I take you back to that platform, take a second to like and subscribe. But only if stories about surviving the people who were supposed to protect you mean something to you. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching this from and what time it is there. I read every single one. You have no idea how much it matters. Now let me tell you everything from the beginning, because this story goes much deeper than a train station. My father died when I was 6. I don't have many memories of him, which is its own particular grief. Not the sharp kind, but the hollow kind. The absence of something you can barely remember having. What I have are fragments. His hands, which were large and always slightly rough. The way he smelled like pine and something warm when he hugged me. A specific afternoon in the backyard with a hose and a lot of laughter that I have held on to for 24 years like a photograph that's starting to fade at the edges. He died in a car accident on a Tuesday morning. He was on his way to work. Nothing dramatic, nothing that made sense. Just a Tuesday and then the rest of everything without him. My mother was 28. I was 6. We had a small house and a modest amount of savings, and my mother, to her credit, did not fall apart. She was practical in the way grief sometimes makes people. She organized, she worked, she moved forward. She met Gary when I was 8. Gary Briggs was a large, loud man who laughed at his own jokes before the punchline and had 2 sons from a previous marriage. Derek, who was 13, and Cole, who was 10. He was not unkind to me in the beginning. He was simply indifferent in the way some men are toward children that aren't theirs. Tolerant the way you're tolerant of weather you didn't order. My mother married Gary when I was 9, and the indifference curdled. It didn't happen overnight. Cruelty in families rarely does. It happens in increments so small that by the time the pattern is visible, you're already deep inside it, and everyone around you has normalized it so thoroughly that you start to wonder if you're the problem. The first thing I noticed was the joke thing. Gary's family had a specific humor. Mean at the edges. The kind where the punchline was always someone's discomfort, and the measure of whether it was funny was how much the target reacted. Derek and Cole had grown up in it. They wielded it like a language. And very quickly, because I was the smallest, and the newest, and the most visibly without protection, I became the primary subject. Small things first. My sandwich disappearing before lunch. Where's your food, loser? Did you forget it? Laughter. Relax, it's just a joke. My homework moved so I couldn't find it the night before it was due. You really can't keep track of anything, can you? Laughter. Relax, it's just a joke. My bedroom door locked from the outside with a piece of furniture against it when I needed to use the bathroom. You should have gone before. Laughter. It's just a joke. I told my mother twice. The first time she said, "Boys will be boys. You need tougher skin." The second time she said, "Gary says you're too sensitive. He thinks you need to learn to take a joke." After the second time, I stopped telling her. What I didn't understand yet at 9 years old was that my mother had made a choice. Not a dramatic, conscious, stated choice, but a quiet one, enacted daily in small decisions and small silences. She had chosen the marriage and the family unit over the uncomfortable truth that the family unit was hurting her son. She had chosen peace, the surface appearance of peace, over the messiness of standing in front of me and saying, "Not okay. This is not okay." She never said that. Not once. By the time I was 11 and standing on that train platform, I had been in Gary's house for 2 years. 2 years of being the butt of every joke that crossed the room. 2 years of sensitive Noah and crybaby Noah and the careful, grinding erosion of a child who just wanted to feel like he belonged somewhere. And the train station was supposed to be a good day. We were going to the city for a family day out. I use the word family with the particular awareness of someone who has learned that the word means different things to different people. To my mother, the day was family. To Gary, I think it was something to tolerate. The optics of a complete family unit going to the city, doing something nice, presenting normally. We took the train in, an hour each way. I sat by the window and watched the landscape change from suburb to city, and felt the specific cautious optimism of a child who keeps hoping this time will be different. The city was good, actually. For most of it, we went to a market. We had lunch at a place with outdoor seating where Gary was in a generous mood, and let Derek and Cole get dessert without the usual negotiation. My mother was relaxed in the way she got when Gary was happy, lighter, more present, more herself. I got ice cream. I walked next to her for part of the afternoon, and she held my hand once, briefly, and it felt like enough. On the way back to the station, Gary was telling a story. One of his long stories that required an audience and periodic confirmation that everyone was listening. Derek and Cole were walking on either side of him. My mother was slightly ahead, half listening, watching for the platform signs. I stopped to tie my shoe. Just that. 20 seconds, maybe 30. I stood up and looked around, and they were not where I expected them to be. I turned, looked down the platform, saw the back of Gary's jacket and the boys and my mother's blue coat disappearing around a corner toward our platform. I ran to catch up. I came around the corner just as the train doors closed. I pressed both hands against the door. The glass was cold. On the other side, Gary had his phone up. My mother was laughing. The train began to move. I stood on that platform for what felt like a very long time, but was probably about 3 minutes. Just stood there, processing. The platform around me was busy in the anonymous way that public places are busy, people moving with purpose, headphones in, rolling suitcases. Nobody looking at me. Nobody noticing the 11-year-old boy standing completely still, with his hands at his sides and his eyes fixed on the end of the platform where the train had gone. Then I started to think. I didn't cry. I want you to know that. Not because I was brave, not because I was numb, but because something in me had learned, through 2 years of Gary's house, to convert panic immediately into problem solving. Crying was what got you laughed at. Crying was what made it worse. So I had developed, young, the habit of taking the emotion and putting it somewhere internal, and asking instead, what do I do right now? What I knew, the train had gone. I had no phone. I was 11. It was not yet a given that 11-year-olds had phones. I had the money in my pocket that my mother had given me for the day, which was $7 and some change. I knew the name of our town. I knew our street address. I knew from the trip in that the train journey was about an hour and cost about $4 each way. What I didn't know, which platform I needed, which train, what time the next one left, whether $7 was enough. I took a breath, and I walked to the information board. The man at the information window was older, with glasses on a chain around his neck and the specific patience of someone who had answered the same questions for 30 years. I walked up to the window and I said, "Excuse me, I need to get to Holloway. I got separated from my family and I don't know which platform or what time the next train is." He looked at me over the glasses for a moment. "Holloway," he said. "Platform 7. Next train is in 22 minutes. He paused. Are you okay, son? Where are your parents? They got on the train, I said. By accident. I didn't explain the rest. He looked at me for another moment. Something in his expression shifted, a softening, a concerned attention that I was not used to from adults. Do you have a ticket? I have money. I don't know if it's enough. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, Platform 7. I'll sort the ticket. You go wait on the bench there, the blue bench. You can see it from here, and I'll bring it to you. I blinked. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, he said. His voice was not sentimental, just matter of fact. Go wait on the bench. His name, I found out when he came with the ticket, was Frank. He pressed the ticket into my hand and also a small paper bag that had a sandwich in it, ham and mustard, slightly squashed, that he said was his, left over from lunch, and that he wasn't going to eat anyway. Platform 7, he said. Don't miss it. I looked at him for a moment. Thank you, I said. He patted my shoulder once, briefly, and walked back to his window. I sat on the blue bench and I ate half the sandwich because I was hungrier than I'd realized. And I thought about Frank, this stranger who had looked at a child standing alone at a ticket window and done the human thing without making a production of it. I thought about the difference between that and what my mother had just done. I kept that thought simple. I didn't build on it. I just held it, at 11, in the way children hold things that are too big for their current vocabulary. The train came. I got on. I found home. I walked through the front door of our house at 6:15. They were in the living room. All of them. Gary on the couch with a beer, Derek and Cole on the floor with a video game, my mother in the armchair with her legs tucked under her. They heard the door. Gary looked up. A grin broke across his face. He actually made it, he said. Derek turned around. No way. Seriously? Cole said, How long did it take you? My mother was looking at me with an expression I had trouble reading. Something between relief and amusement and something else that she was keeping carefully back. 4 hours, Gary said, checking his watch with theatrical satisfaction. I said he'd be back by 7. Derek, you owe me $5. Derek said something dismissive. I stood in the doorway and I looked at my mother. I waited for her to come to me, to come across the room and put her arms around me and say, I'm sorry. That went too far. Are you okay? She stayed in the armchair. How did you get home? She asked. Train, I said. A man at the information window helped me. Gary laughed. See? That's the thing. You coddle a kid too much and they never learn to figure things out. He pointed at me with his beer. That right there is a life lesson, Noah. You're welcome. You're welcome. He said you're welcome. I looked at my mother one more time. She said, Are you hungry? There's food in the kitchen. And that was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. No arms around me. Just, there's food in the kitchen. I went to the kitchen. I stood at the counter and I ate cold pasta from a container in the fridge, and I looked out the window at the darkening backyard, and I made a decision that I was too young to fully articulate, but that I understood completely. I was going to get out. Not dramatically, not running away, just building a route, step by step, year by year, until I was far enough away from this house that nobody in it could leave me somewhere and call it a lesson. That was the decision. 11 years old. Cold pasta. Darkening backyard. The clearest thought I have ever had. I kept my head down for the next 7 years. Not because I gave up. Because I was building. I was, it turned out, good at school. Not in the performed way that's about pleasing teachers, in the real way, the curious, genuinely wants to understand way. Math made sense to me in the deep structural way. Science. Later, when I got to high school, economics. The way systems worked, the way numbers told stories, the way patterns inside complexity could be read if you knew how to look. I found a teacher in 8th grade who changed things. Her name was Miss Okafor. She taught math, and she had exactly zero tolerance for people coasting, and exactly infinite patience for people genuinely trying. She noticed that I was genuinely trying, and she started handing me books that weren't on any curriculum. Introductory statistics, behavioral economics, a book about mathematical modeling in the real world that I read cover to cover in 3 days. "You have a particular kind of mind," she told me once, when she handed back a test I'd gotten 100% on. You see the structure underneath things. Don't waste it. I didn't waste it. I applied to every scholarship I could find from sophomore year onward. I filled out applications on the family computer late at night when the house was quiet. I wrote essays about goals and ambitions that I kept carefully impersonal. Not because I didn't have personal material, God knows I had personal material, but because I didn't want anyone at that table reading over my shoulder to know what I was really building toward. By senior year, I had 4 scholarship offers. I accepted the best one, a full academic scholarship to a university 3 states away with a strong economics and data science program. I told my family at dinner. Gary said, 3 states away? That's a long drive. Derek said, what do you even do with economics? Cole said nothing. My mother said, that's wonderful, Noah. And she smiled the smile she used for things that she hadn't expected but couldn't find fault with. I'm proud of you. It was the first time she had said that to me unprompted. I nodded. I ate my dinner. And 2 months later, I left. I need to skip forward now, because you need to understand what 7 years of building quietly produces. University was the first time I felt fully like myself. The first time I was in rooms that had been built for the kind of mind I had. The first time my specific way of seeing things, the pattern reading, the structural intuition, the ability to sit inside complex data and find the story, was not just tolerated, but actively valued. I graduated with honors. I went straight into a quantitative analyst role at a financial data firm, small company, serious work, the kind of environment where you could learn an enormous amount in a short time if you were willing to put in the hours. I was willing. I worked there for 3 years. Then I joined a startup, a data intelligence platform for mid-sized businesses, as their head of analytics. We scaled fast. I built the analytics infrastructure from the ground up. When the company sold, 4 years after I joined, the acquisition terms included an equity payout that was significant by any normal person's definition of the word. I was 31 years old. I had an apartment in a city I loved, work that interested me every day, a group of friends who were made of the same material as me, driven and curious and genuinely funny, and money in the bank that represented 7 years of quiet, systematic building. I had not been home in 4 years. Not because I had cut them off dramatically, because I had simply gotten busy and the invitations had been infrequent, and the gap had grown without anyone doing anything dramatic to close it. My mother called on my birthday every year. I called on hers. We existed in the polite parallel distance of people who have never quite found the language for what sits between them. Gary had retired. Derek was in sales. Cole had moved to another state. The house was quieter, my mother said on our annual birthday calls. Different. I thought about the train station sometimes. Less and less as the years went on, but still. I thought about the platform and the glass and my mother's laughing face. And I thought about Frank at the information window, with his ham and mustard sandwich and his complete lack of sentimentality. I had never forgotten Frank. This matters. Hold on to that. The call that changed everything came on a Wednesday in October. It was my mother. Not the birthday call. Wrong month. Something in the way she said my name when I answered told me immediately that this was different. "Noah," she said, "I need to talk to you. I've been thinking about something for a very long time and I need to say it." I sat down. I waited. "I need to tell you that I'm sorry," she said. "For a lot of things, but one thing specifically." I held the phone very still. "The train station," she said. "When you were 11. Gary thought it would be funny and She stopped. A long pause. "I let it happen. I laughed. I watched you through the glass and I laughed. And I have never stopped thinking about your face in that window. Never. Not in 20 years. I said nothing. You never told me what that was like," she said. "You just came home and ate leftovers and never said a word. And I told myself you were fine. I told myself Gary was right, that it was a lesson, that you were resilient." Her voice was fraying at the edges now. But I was lying to myself. I knew it was wrong when I was doing it, and I let Gary's voice be louder than what I knew, and She stopped again. "I'm sorry, Noah. I am genuinely, deeply sorry." I sat with the phone for a moment. Outside my window, the city was doing its usual thing. Traffic, voices, a bus releasing its brakes somewhere below. "What made you call now?" I asked. A pause. "Gary and I are separating," she said. "We have been for about a year, slowly. It's been a long time coming." Another pause. "And when he left, when he actually packed and left, I sat in this house and the first thing I thought about, the first thing, was your face at that window. And I thought, I have spent 20 years letting his version of things be louder than what I actually knew. And I am not going to do it anymore." I thought for a long time before I answered. "I hear you, Mom," I said, "and I want to respond to this properly. Not on the phone, I want to come home." A silence that had a texture of surprise in it. "You want to come home? I want to sit across from you and have this conversation like adults," I said. "Face to face. Can I come next weekend?" She said yes. And I booked the train. Because, of course, I took the train. I drove to the station on a Friday evening. Same city. Different station, a larger one, central, rebuilt in the years since I was last here. But the same general geography. The same direction from home. I stood on the platform waiting for my train, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, the particular feeling of being 11 and pressing my hands against the glass. Not with the pain of then, with the distance of now. There is something interesting that happens when you've done the work of building a life that is genuinely yours. The old wounds don't disappear, but they change location. They stop being at the front of everything and move to somewhere further back, still visible, still real, but no longer the thing you see first when you look in the mirror. I had done that work. Not perfectly, not without scars, but I had done it. My train arrived. I got on. My mother was smaller than I remembered. I don't mean that critically. It's just the thing that happens when you haven't seen someone in 4 years. Your memory holds the larger version. The version from when they filled more of your world. And then you stand in their kitchen and they're just a person. A person who has aged and become slightly smaller and is holding a dish towel because she doesn't know what to do with her hands. "You look like your father," she said when she saw me. I hadn't expected that. "You've said that before," I said. "I know. It's still true." She pressed her lips together for a moment. "Come in." I made dinner. We sat at the kitchen table, same chairs, everything slightly shabbier from use but fundamentally unchanged. I had eaten years of meals at this table and felt invisible. Sitting there as a 31-year-old man was a different sensation. I fit differently. I took up more space. We ate first. She'd made chicken soup, which was her cooking for comfort food, and we talked about surface things, my flight, her neighbor's new dog, the renovation she'd been thinking about on the back bathroom. Then the soup bowls were empty, and the table was quiet. And she looked at me. "I want to ask you something," I said. "And I want you to answer honestly." She nodded. At the train station, when the doors closed and the train was pulling away. "What were you actually thinking?" She was quiet for a long time. "I was thinking it was funny," she said. "In the moment. Gary was laughing, the boys were laughing, and she shook her head slightly. I had learned, without knowing I was learning it, to see things through Gary's eyes, to calibrate what was funny and what was okay by his reaction, and he was laughing, so I laughed. "And when you saw my face," I said. "At the glass." A pause. "Something changed," she said, "in that second. Something went cold in my chest. I thought, this isn't right. And then the train moved, and it was done, and Gary was saying he'll figure it out, it'll be good for him, and she stopped. I let his voice be louder than what I knew. "You did that a lot," I said. "I know. For years. I know. Not just the train station. I know, Noah." Her voice was very quiet. "I know." I looked at my mother. This woman who had loved me in the broken and limited way that she had managed, who had failed me in the specific ways that people fail their children when they lose themselves inside someone else's version of things. I was not going to perform forgiveness I didn't have yet. But I was also not going to perform anger I had largely already processed. "Here's what I want you to know," I said. "I'm okay. Whatever the intention was that day, I'm okay. I made it home. And what I found on that platform when I was standing there alone was that I could figure things out. That I had the resources inside me to navigate without help." I paused. "I don't think that was what you intended to teach me, but it's what I learned. And I've been using it ever since." She was crying now. Quietly. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. "But there's something else," I said. "Something I've wanted to tell you for a while." She looked up. "Do you remember a man named Frank?" She blinked. "Who?" "At the station that day. The man at the information window. He got me my ticket home. He gave me his sandwich. He was kind to me in the completely simple way that someone is kind when they see a child who needs help and they just do something about it." She shook her head slowly. "I didn't know about anyone." "No," I said. "You didn't, because you were on the train." I said it without harshness, just as fact. Frank was a stranger. He didn't know me. He owed me nothing. He saw a child alone at a ticket window and he just helped. No drama, no lesson. He just helped. My mother wiped her eyes. "I have thought about Frank a lot over the years," I said. "About that specific choice. The human choice. The one that doesn't require knowing someone or having an obligation to them. Just, there is someone who needs help. And I am someone who can provide it. And that's the whole equation." I reached into my jacket pocket. I put something on the table between us. It was an envelope. She looked at it. "What is this?" "For the last year," I said, "I've been running a foundation. Small, so far. Growing. It provides emergency travel assistance to minors and young people who find themselves stranded or separated from family in public transit situations. Train stations, bus stations, airports. We partner with transit authorities in 6 cities right now. We have volunteers who are trained to identify young people who are alone and make sure they have what they need to get home safely." My mother stared at the envelope. "I named it the Frank Initiative," I said. "I spent 2 years trying to find the actual Frank, the man from that day. I hired someone to help me look, He died in 2019. He had worked at that station for 27 years. He had no family. My mother's hand went to her mouth. The envelope, I said, is a letter explaining what the foundation does. I'm telling you because it started on that platform. Because the thing that happened that day, whatever the intention behind it, led me to Frank. And Frank led me to this. I paused. I thought you should know where the story went. She picked up the envelope with both hands, held it carefully, like it was something that required that. Noah, she said. And then nothing else for a moment, just my name, carrying everything she didn't have words for yet. I know, I said. We sat at that kitchen table for 3 more hours. We talked, really talked, in the way we had never managed when I was growing up. She told me things about those years that I hadn't known. About her own fear of being alone after my father. About the way Gary had filled that fear and then slowly become the thing she was more afraid of. About the specific self-betrayal of knowing something is wrong and choosing the comfort of denial. I told her about the years of building, the scholarship applications in the quiet house, the university, the work, the equity payout, the foundation. She listened to all of it with the expression of someone watching a life they weren't fully present for being played back to them. You did all of this, she said. I did all of this, I said. Not with pride exactly, with honesty. Without us, she said. Not entirely, I said. Frank helped. Miss Okafor helped. There were people along the way who did the human thing without being asked. I paused. It just wasn't always the people who were supposed to. She accepted that, didn't deflect, didn't minimize. I want to be different now, she said. I know that's a strange thing to say at this point. I know it's late. But I want you to know that I want to be different. I looked at my mother. Tell me about yourself, I said. Not about Gary, not about the house or the neighbors. Tell me about you. What you want. What you're afraid of. What you're looking forward to. She looked surprised, like the question was a room she hadn't been invited into before. That might take a while, she said. I have time, I said. I stayed for 3 days. Not because the damage was fixed, it wasn't. Not in 3 days, not in any amount of time that makes the word fixed quite right. But because there was something worth showing up for, and I had both the means and the willingness to show up for it. And that combination is rarer than it sounds. On the last morning, I walked to the train station alone. Not Millfield, this was a different station, closer to my mother's house. But a train station. I bought my own ticket. I had a coffee from the platform vendor. I sat on a bench and watched the morning move through the station. Early commuters, a family with too much luggage, a teenager with headphones, a grandfather and a small child walking hand in hand to the information board. I watched a station worker notice a young kid, maybe 12, maybe 13, standing alone near the door with a look on his face that I recognized from the inside. I watched the station worker walk over, say something. Watch the kid's face go from tight to slightly less tight. See the worker point somewhere. Nod, put a hand briefly on the kid's shoulder. I watched the kid walk toward his platform with just a little more certainty than he'd had before. I sat with my coffee and I felt something clean. Not complete. Not resolved in the way stories in movies are resolved. But clean. Like a room you've spent a long time straightening that isn't perfect, but is genuinely better than it was. My train arrived. I got on, and as it pulled away from the platform, I looked out the window. Not at anything in particular, just at the world, moving. Here is what I want to leave you with. When I was 11 years old and standing on that platform, the thing I needed most was simple. I needed one person to look at me and do the human thing. Not a heroic thing. Not a complicated thing. just the basic, ordinary, completely available human thing, I see that you need help. Here is help. Frank did that. Frank, who didn't know me, who owed me nothing, who had a window full of questions to answer and a half-eaten sandwich and 27 years of daily work at a job that probably never made anyone's list of important professions. Frank changed my life. Not my mother, not Gary, not the lesson that was supposedly being taught on that platform. Frank, a stranger with patience and a sandwich. I think about that a lot when I wonder about the point of individual human decency in a world that is very large and very complicated and often very unkind. The point is, Frank, the point is that you never know which child standing at your window is going to carry what you do for them for 20 years. You never know which small, ordinary act of basic human care is going to plant something in a person that becomes a foundation literally and metaphorically decades later. You never know. So you do it anyway. Every time. Without waiting to know. Now the other thing. I know that some of you watching this grew up in houses like mine, where the cruelty was small enough to be deniable, where the word joke was used as a permission slip for things that were not jokes, where you were told you were too sensitive for having a completely appropriate response to being treated in ways that were not okay. I want to say something to you directly. What was done to you is not the sum of what you are. The people who did it were not seeing you. They were managing their own limitations and calling it parenting. And their inability to see you clearly, to protect you properly, to show up in the way that a child requires, that says something precise and true about them. It says nothing precise or true about you. You are not what they made you feel like. You are what you built in the quiet. You are what you kept going toward when the people who should have been your Frank were too busy laughing on the wrong side of the glass. And somewhere, in a station somewhere, in a school somewhere, in an ordinary Tuesday interaction somewhere, there is a Frank waiting to do the simple human thing for you. Let them. And then, when you are able, be the Frank for someone else. That's the whole thing. That is the entire point. My name is Noah Briggs. I was 11 years old when my family left me on a platform and bet on whether I could find my way home. I found my way home. And then I spent 20 years making sure no other child had to find it alone.